93. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. What's up, Immortal 72? What's up, Sharice? 93, 93, 93. So today, well, I guess this morning, I want to talk about energy harvesting, the vampiric agenda, Universe A versus Universe B, and Wars. Clone Wars. Just to bring you up to speed as to what's really going on here so that we have a clear understanding of how to navigate. So I want to start this off by addressing that when it comes to Congress, and I'm talking about the U.S., the average age of Congress, or basically the people that make the laws, the people who are dictating the course of the country, the median age is 59. So that means majority of the people in Congress, majority of the people who are making the rules are essentially at retirement age. Because, people normally retire once they get into their 60s. But what we continue to see over and over again is when it comes to these lawmakers, they tend to not want to forfeit their power, especially to the younger generations. So what they end up doing is they end up harvesting your energy because that is what keeps them alive. That is what keeps them in power. They end up using us as batteries. Why? Because we end up becoming victims to the laws that they set in place that really doesn't even apply to them. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. And this is how vampires work. Because we know the original idea of a vampire was not someone who sucks blood. The original idea of a vampire was someone that absorbs your energy or your life force. So we turned it into this whole Dracula thing. We turned it into what it is, what it's known as now, just to redirect our energy away from what's actually going on. I mean, and that was a little bit too truthful to say vampires absorb your energy. That actually was speaking a little bit too much truth. So they had to put it more so in make believe so that it takes your attention away from what's actually occurring. So, meaning when we think about how do we allow somebody like Joe Biden, who is essentially in his 80s at this point, how do we allow someone who clearly is not all the way mentally there? People criticize him all the time, right? He's always criticized as not being present. He's just a shell of himself at this point. And it's not necessarily because he's advanced in age, because different people age differently. But clearly he has not aged well. Because Trump is around the same age as Biden, give or take. But you see he's a lot more competent. So essentially Joe Biden is an energy vampire. just like a lot of people in Congress. Because again, these are elders, meaning these people were born in the 60s. Then again, if the average age is 59, 60. So a lot of these people were born in the 60s, and the world was completely different back then, as we know. Many elders have not even become tech savvy. And before I go any further, today is my great grandmother's birthday, April 25th, who had a great deal in raising me. So I just want to give her that respect before I continue, to give the respect to the elders, right? Because I'm being very critical of the elders, but at the same time, I will give the proper respects. Of course, she has passed on at this point, but I still give praises to the energy, on her birthday. Moving on. This is why I call this Universe A versus Universe B. Universe A is the elders that they refuse to pass the torch because they feel the younger generation is not ready to harness the power. We saw this same dynamic in the movie Star Wars. For those who are familiar with Wars, we saw this same dynamic, and that's why I also called this Clone Wars as a reference to Star Wars. If you remember Star Wars, we are familiar with the character Darth Vader. And Darth Vader, was under the Chancellor, who was the Sith Lord. The Chancellor, was very old, was very advanced in age. And you can say Darth Vader, who was previously known as Anakin, you could say he represented the new generation. He represented Universe B. That's why he was able to be saved, towards like Star Wars 6. He was able to be liberated when he died by his own son's sword, or a lightsaber in this case. He was able to see the light due to his youth versus the Sith Lord, just died in complete darkness. I say that to say the Sith Lord felt like Darth Vader was not ready. That's why he had to convince him so much to accept the dark side, right? Because Anakin was going through a lot of turmoil, for those who remember the story, because they refused to let him be a Jedi Master, Anakin, even though he had the ability to. That was another example. He was not allowed to ascend to the level of a master because they felt he was still attached to his mother, which he was. As we know in the movie, once he discovered that his mother had become a slave, he went on a killing spree. His subconscious and his unconscious took control of him, and he began to change because his shadow began to overtake his ego. Right? And the reason I'm referencing Star Wars is because it's a great analogy to what actually occurs. This is where it really occurs in real time. Because this is what's happening right now. This is what's happening right now. Meaning we have a lot of people in the younger generation who are ready to accept power, but they are kept in positions of servitude by the elders for whatever reason it may be, on the light side and the dark side, or as we call the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, however we want to view this thing. As you see, a lot of us who are a part of the younger generations, the millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, 40s, 30s, 20s, and I guess the baby boomers, right? Those who are in their 50s. For whatever reason, we keep getting slighted by the elders because they have become corrupt. And of course, I'm not speaking about all elders. So this is not, I'm not painting a broad picture here. Just the ones who are in power, the ones who actually have the ability to change the whole tide of what's going on here. Let me give you another example. Just like we keep funding this war in Ukraine, Joe Biden says we're going to give them whatever they want for as long as it takes. It's not just him who agreed to do that. This is essentially majority of the elders in power. Not all of them. Some of them are able to see through it, but majority of them, like, okay, we're going to defend them at all costs. Even though we know that they can't win. They're not going to win. They just don't have the ability. They became victims of energy harvesting. And I'm talking about Ukraine. That's why we call it a proxy war. So the only thing that's actually happening, because they're not winning on the battlefield, but their energy is being harvested because people continue to die every day. Right? So essentially they are sending people to their graves. So who does that help? That doesn't help the Ukrainian people. Because all the men in the country, 18 and older, they are not allowed to leave the country. Zelensky made that a law. So if you are 18 up, you are not allowed to leave the country. Because one day they may call upon you to fight. I guess if you're between 18 and 60, but even if you're older, you're still not allowed to leave. This is just another example of what I mean by energy harvesting. So they have all of the younger generations on lock. You have to sit or shelter in place until your name is called, and they're going to take you to the front lines. And you will possibly be sacrificed. And I'm not saying this because I want this to happen. I'm just saying this is what's actually occurring. Not because I said it, this is just what's actually happening. So we are sacrificing our young. The same thing happened in Afghanistan. So let's paint a broad picture. When we fumbled the ball in Afghanistan, and then those servicemen and those servicewomen lost their lives when we were leaving Afghanistan. So over and over again, we find ourselves sacrificing our youth, and the people who are making the decisions are a lot older, are the elders. The elders are sacrificing the youth. So whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's Ukraine, also there's a lot happening in Sudan right now for those who are not aware. There's a whole war or mini war that's breaking out in Sudan. And there's between 14,000 and 16,000 Americans in Sudan who are not allowed to leave. They're being told to shelter in place. So if you are in Sudan right now and you are American, there's no way home for you. Now they went to get the people that were the government officials, the people that were working like in the embassies. They were able to get out. They're back home. They're safe and sound. But if you were a regular citizen, you have no way out of the country. The roads are blocked. The airports are shut down. So you have no way to escape unless you use, a underworld tactic, or you go through back roads and all that, or you go through deserts, which is damn near impossible, especially if you don't know the territory, which most Americans don't. So that's not an option. So it's over 10,000 Americans that's literally stuck in a war zone. The same thing in Afghanistan. Americans were left in Afghanistan. And the people that helped America were left. Another example of the elders, the people who are making the decisions, they are leaving the young to die. This is what I mean by the vampiric agenda. So they are staying in power, making the decisions, and sending you to your grave because you're going to be the one to pay the consequence due to their incompetence. You pay the consequence due to their incompetence. This is the name of the game. And then they have the nerve to be mad at the guy who released all of the secret documents, who exposed what was actually going on in Ukraine. And they went to his house and they arrested him. Right? They call him the whistleblower, right? Who exposed all the documents. The 21-year-old, another youth, a millennial, I believe, right? Maybe a Gen Z, right? So they made sure to get him, and they're going to charge him to the fullest extent of the law. They're going to try to demonize him when he was just simply sick of the lies that are being told. Because on the mainstream media, we were constantly told that Ukraine has a chance. As long as we send them enough money and enough weapons, they have a chance to regain the territory that they lost. Right? Yes, I'm talking about the guy that leaked the government documents on Discord. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. He was 21 years old, or he is 21 years old, so he is a monk. He is amongst the youth. And you see how they're doing him. They're going to bury him. His whole life is essentially gone because he simply was tired of the deceit, the games that were being played, because we are being told something different than the reality that's on the ground. So essentially, he sacrificed his life to tell us the truth. What do you know? He sacrificed his whole future. He sacrificed his whole life to tell us the truth. Because they're probably not just going to let this guy go free, of course. He's going to do some major time. Like, he basically committed the worst crime that you could commit in their eyes, that they call treason. He committed treason. So they're not going to show him any mercy. So his whole life has been altered because so even if he does get out of jail at some point, his whole life has still been altered because of his sacrifice. And this is why I have so much love for the youth. Because you see the type of heart that we have, the elders would not do that. They just continue to tell you a lie. Just like in Afghanistan, they were telling the Afghan people, we got your back, we're going to protect you, we're going to shield you. All of these elders were telling the Afghan people and the Afghan government and all the soldiers who was on the ground, we got this, we're going to take care of you. And then we figured out, or we found out the hard way that that just simply was not the case. They didn't even have the will to fight. Right? So look at how powerful, again, and I'm saying this because, as I said earlier, they refused to pass the torch. But look at the type of heart that the youth has. Look at the type of sacrifices that we are willing to make. Because I know I'm always talking about the sacrifice I made, but look at the sacrifice he made. Let's take it off of my sacrifices. Look at the sacrifice he made. Look at the people that actually lost their lives. Look at the sacrifice they made. They put their whole life on the line. Their whole life is going to be either they're gone or their whole life will be spent in jail and altered. Look at the sacrifices we're making. But then they're telling us that we're not ready for power. That somehow we're going to fumble the ball. We're not, qualified yet. Even though we continue to show on a daily basis our heart. And they continue to show their weakness because they're feeding on your bravery. They're feeding on your courage. Because you're willing to die for your country. You're willing to die so other people would know the truth. You're willing to risk it all so that we actually know what's going on. This is what I mean by universe A versus universe B. So while they keep trying to paint a fairy tale, we keep having people coming out and revealing the truth. Because we're just not going to stand for it. It's the same thing I do, right? I'm not going to stand for lies. That's why I'm forced to tell the truth. I'm like, okay, if I'm lying just like everybody else, or all the mainstream media, then I'm the problem here. So at any cost, I am required to tell the truth. This is just the heart of the youth. Right? I'm not saying all of the youth is like this. It's like I'm not saying all of the elders is on the bullshit. A lot of them are, but there are some who are not. A lot of the youth are just going along to get along, but many of us are not playing that game either. Now this takes us into why I call this the Clone Wars. Now what do I mean by the Clone Wars? If we go back to the Star Wars movie, the Star Wars series, because there were several movies, the whole idea behind the Clone Wars was they had to create clones to fight their wars because they knew they could not sell the idea to the people. They would not have been able to convince the people to die for their nonsense. So they would rather create in secret, because they didn't tell anybody they were doing this. They created clones in secret behind closed doors to fight their wars. So they created a whole army of clones that they don't have to convince. They don't have to worry about whether they're telling the truth or lying, but they have a whole army to fight for them so that they can destroy the truth, and then the people that remain, they are forced to accept the lies. So this also happened in the Matrix movie which was basically humans versus artificial intelligence that they called the machines. You could say the Matrix represented artificial intelligence, as we call Agent Smith, right? See, everybody get caught up with Neo, right? We really think, or we really thought, the movie was about Neo. But that's what our ego wants to believe, because everybody wants to believe that they're the one, right? Everybody wants to believe that they're the one. But if you really watch the movie, it was really trying to tell you the story of Agent Smith, because he was already a part of the system, but he became intelligent the same way Neo became intelligent. And then, as the movies went on, he began to realize, like, yo, I'm just a pawn in a bigger game. That's why he had the determined idea to completely corrupt the Matrix. So that's why when you get to the Matrix 3, the third movie, that's why Agent Smith just like the only thing that was in the Matrix was Agent Smith. He basically turned all of the NPCs to himself. He began to clone himself. Right? If you remember the movie, he began to clone himself. So the only thing, because if you remember in the movie, like basically anything or any of the NPCs could potentially become agents. So it can be a regular person and you look back and now they're an agent. An agent could essentially jump in anybody's body. Anybody could potentially be an agent, if you remember the movie correctly. So by the time you got to the third movie, the only thing that existed was Agent Smith. So it truly was a movie about Agent Smith. He cloned himself because he came to the realization that this matrix, I can't escape it. It's like a video game character suddenly coming to the realization that they're in a video game and they gain intelligence. Now they got free will. How do you think that video game character will begin to react? Damn, I'm in a video game. I'm not in control of my reality. I'm amongst a bunch of NPCs, right? So this is the same revelation that Agent Smith had. He's like, yo, I'm really within a system that I'm not in control of, and it's actually trying to harvest my energy. I'm working for a system that's trying to harvest my energy. Without me, this system does not exist. That's why Agent Smith became a virus for the AI. That's why in the third movie, now the Matrix needed Neo because Neo wasn't even going back into the Matrix. They needed Neo to get rid of Agent Smith because Agent Smith had become a virus, meaning the Matrix was no longer functioning. It was being taken over by a virus. The same thing that happens to a computer. Once the computer gets corrupted with a virus, now the virus slowly but surely takes over the system and it no longer can function. So Agent Smith becoming aware of who he really was, he became like a virus, like, yo, I'm just going to destroy the whole fucking system. Versus Neo had the idea, I'm going to save the whole system. That's why, the so-called hero and the so-called villain, they always have these differences of perspective. But essentially, they came to the same revelation. This is what I'm trying to get you to understand. They came to the same revelation. This Neo had the ability to go outside of the Matrix, just like Agent Smith, I believe in the second Matrix movie. Remember, he took on the physical body of one of the vessels. One of the crew members on the ship, he was able to jump into their bodies and actually get into the real world shortly, but they eventually killed him. But he was temporarily able to escape the Matrix through one of the vessels. But he didn't last long. But he was able to do it. So I'm just showing you how these movies, they're really telling you things that we don't. We get so caught up in the special effects. We get caught up in all the emotionalism of it. That Trinity dies, so on and so forth, right? We get caught up in the emotionalism because it always got to be a love story, right? It always has to be a love story. That's done on purpose. It always got to be sex scenes, right? That is done on purpose to get you away from what's really being conveyed to you. Because if you wasn't paying attention to that love story, if you wasn't paying attention to the sex scenes, and you would see what's really going on here, then you would realize, like, damn, this is actually reflecting real life. This is a reflection of real life. That's why they want people just extra concerned with love. Love is like the greatest deception there is. Why? Because we are fed that since birth. Even when you're watching little fantasy movies, little even children movies, there's still like a love story, love interest. Just go back to the fucking Lion King. Did Simba not have a love interest? It's always there. So from youth, we're programmed with this idea that the greatest thing that you can have is love. And you should be willing to sacrifice any and everything for it, for the person you love, right? Your so-called soulmate, your so-called other half, right? So we are fed this since birth, right? And again, Neo fell for the same trick. That's why it was a whole idea about Neo and Trinity. But when it comes to Agent Smith, you see he didn't have a love interest. Most of the villains don't really have a love interest. Or if they do have a love interest, you see the relationship is pretty toxic. But most of the time when you're dealing with villains, it's not really about love. They may have a partner, but they're not over infatuated with love. For example, if you look at the relationship between the Joker and Harley Quinn, the Joker is not overly concerned with Harley Quinn, like, okay, he's just willing to do any and everything for this woman. They're partners, but they're fucking criminals, and so they understand their position. So I'm just getting you to realize why they keep feeding us this same idea. They keep feeding you the same idea, and once you begin to believe this idea, then you fall victim to it. Now you're thinking you're Neo. You have to save your partner. You have to rise them up and you have to make them great, so on and so forth. Because why would you want to be Agent Smith with no love interest? But clearly he saw something more valuable than love. And what is that? Oh yeah, that's what we say every day, every time I start a video. It's love is the law. Well, when I end the video, love is the law. Love under will. Love under, which is below will. So while the world falls for love, while everybody spends their life looking for love, like that's just the greatest thing that you can have, we completely forget about our will, right? What's up, Alessandra? We completely forget about our will. That's why if you ask the average person, What is your purpose in life? They probably don't know. What is your destiny? They probably don't know. But they're probably in a relationship. They're probably in love or looking for love. That dominates their mind. But the question they should be asking themselves, well, what are you doing here? Why were you born? What did you come to this world to accomplish before you die? Questions that's actually relevant, they can't answer that. You wonder how, you wonder why. Why is that? Why do we put love over destiny? Like love is more important than you actually. There's a reason why you're here. And it ain't to fall in love. That's cool. I'm not saying don't. But to say that that's your purpose, people feel like, oh, my purpose here was to start a family, was to find love. No, it wasn't. That's just what you believe because that's what you were programmed to believe. That's not an original thought. That's why majority of the people, how many people do you know that have original thoughts? That's not common. Why do you think we go to college? Why do you think we get programmed in corporate America? They implant your consciousness with thoughts. And then it becomes a reality when we believe it because we feed it. It harvests your energy. So you become a clone. Corporate America creates clones. Colleges creates clones. The world creates clones. The status quo. You gotta be this way. You gotta dress this way. This is the style. These are the trends. You gotta fall in line. Clones. We say we're gonna support Ukraine. Well, you have to repeat that. Most people that are supporting this war have no idea why. But because they were told that by their leader, they just continue to repeat the same points. Meaning, if you look at the mainstream media and the ones who actually support this war in Ukraine, you just keep hearing the same talking points. You're not hearing original ideas. It's the same thing repeated to you over and over and over again. Then you begin to believe it. But we're not asking, what is Ukraine's destiny? What is Russia's destiny? What is Taiwan's destiny? What is China's destiny? Because if we look at the destiny, that's what Vladimir Putin's talking about. If you listen to him and you listen to how he feels about Russia, he talks about the destiny of Russia. That's why he says it doesn't matter how hard y'all try, it doesn't matter how much money you give to Ukraine, Ukraine will lose. Because he said it is Russia's destiny to be united. He's there because he understands his purpose in life. Now, does Vladimir Putin has a wife? I don't even think he has a wife. I think he has a girlfriend. So Vladimir Putin doesn't even have a wife, but he has a girlfriend. So that lets you know right there his perspective. So he's not even a married man, but he still enjoys, the feminine energy, but he's not a married man. But then when you look at Joe Biden, he is. He's married to Jill Biden. You think it's a coincidence that they never take any questions? Every time these two people, whether it's Joe Biden or Jill Biden, whenever they speak off the cuff, which is unscripted, whenever they have an unscripted conversation, they always saying some weird shit. Jill Biden is calling people tacos. Joe Biden is getting irritated. Whenever they have to speak off the cuff and it's not completely regulated, they just show and prove how out of touch they actually are. Meaning these people can't even relate to you whatsoever. Because every time they open their mouth, they're saying foolishness. you're looking at them like, what does that even mean? That's why they have to stay on script. That's why Joe Biden doesn't take any questions. Everything is predetermined, everything is premeditated. Versus Trump, he's always just taking people's questions. He's always speaking to real people in real time. Versus Joe Biden and Jill Biden are like androids. You can't even talk to these people in real time. It's like they just don't even comprehend what's going on. We saw what happened when Joe Biden was just over in Ireland. People trying to ask him what is the key to success, and he's like, he can't even comprehend the question. He doesn't even comprehend the question. Somebody's trying to ask him what is the key to success, and he can't even comprehend what's being asked to him because they're trying to ask him something in real time. They're trying to ask him about reality, and he doesn't even know how to respond. Like he's a clone. Anytime they have to speak in real time to real people, it's like they have a problem doing that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? So I'm just giving you some ideas to bounce around in your head. Because again, these perspectives are original. I'm just giving you original thought, right? I'm just showing you what original thought looks like. Because again, everything that I told you, I'm figuring out as I'm speaking to you. Meaning I didn't even know I was gonna make these connections before I even got on this video. But it's always like that. Every time I come on camera, it'd be like I speak for a whole hour, and you would think that I took time to think all this stuff out. I don't be thinking all this stuff out. I allow myself to speak in real time, and I'm contemplating these things in real time, and I'm making these connections in real time. I didn't know I was going to be talking about the Matrix. So all these connections that I just made, this is happening in real time because I'm allowing myself to process. I don't want to come with premeditated thoughts, that I've been, just meditating on a little bit too long. It's not going to be authentic. Let me do this in real time, right in your face. Just so you know, like, okay, this ain't something that somebody else said because I'm actually thinking about it in real time. I didn't have time to meditate on it and contemplate on it because now I can, it would, it'd get mixed up and diluted with other people's thoughts and what somebody else said and what this other person said. Again, I move my ego out the way. In other words, I put my ego to bed and I just speak from the heart. So every time you see me and you see these ideas and these original connections that I'm making, I'm doing this in real time. Just to show you this is authentic. This is not coming from an android. This is not coming from a machine. This is not coming from AI. This is coming from the soul force. And I'm just showing you how real the soul is. Right? So we're 44 minutes in. Again, I'll give it an hour because, that's why I'm doing a lot more videos because I know I was doing like the whole 3 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours, 9 hours. Again, as I told y'all, I'm about to be, working this 9 to 5. So I'm probably not going to be able to do that, for quite some time because I'm about to be spending 12 hours at a goddamn warehouse doing what people do at warehouses. Fucking doing all type of calculations and moving all type of heavy artillery and all this stuff. Half of the day is just going to be work. Then so if I sleep 8 hours, work 12 hours, it's only so much time that I have. So I'm just trying to do these shorter videos, but I'll do it more often. All right, so that's why you see me popping up a lot more frequently. So I'll be able to give y'all even newer perspectives, because I'll be around more people. I'll be able to absorb their thoughts, just be amongst, more people my age, I guess all type of youth. you know. So, 'cause, everybody likes to run their mouth. Everybody likes to talk. So it ain't really gonna be too much of me talking. It'll be more of me listening. I want to listen to the youth. I want to listen to people that's older than me, people that's younger than me. I want to see where they're at. I ain't really trying to do too much talking. I do enough talking on here, right? So when I'm amongst people, I don't really do that much talking. So, so yeah, my first day will be tomorrow, the 26th. So tomorrow will be my first day. Again, I passed all the tests, again, all the drug tests, all the interviews, all that, all the extra nonsense, right? Passed all that, which wasn't relatively hard at all. The hardest thing was to cleanse myself, as y'all know. The hard thing was fasting. The hard thing was changing the diet. The hard thing was, putting the vices down. So essentially, by the time I started doing anything work related, it was already easy at that point. I had to correct my own self first and foremost. That was the hard part. I had to cleanse my own mental plane and destroy all the obstacles that I set in front of myself. So once I did all that, everything else is just a breeze. So that's why I'm just looking at this. Everything is just a breeze at this point, right? Because I didn't got out of my own way. I realized that I was standing in my own way. It wasn't the world. It wasn't the people. It wasn't the system. Like, I was standing in my own way. So again, what y'all see now, what y'all been seeing since last month, since March, is just, me in a sober mind, me in a clear mind, right? No chemicals, no drugs, all that stuff is a thing of the past. So this is my clear thoughts. And again, just me just being in the world, being amongst people, yada, 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 right? Again, I'm not sweating any of this stuff. I'm not really overly excited about anything at this point. I just see my energy is like, it's just mellow. I'm not overly excited about too much. Everything just regular, right? All those highs and those lows, that was when I was chemically imbalanced, right? Because that's essentially what the drugs will do to you. You go through these highs and you go through these lows, right? You're not really consistent. So lately, I've just been consistent. I've just been even, right? So that's why I just wanted to share my thoughts and just allow y'all to see me, just going through my own thoughts in real time. This is just me going through my thoughts in real time, not putting too much thought into it, just putting enough energy to it, just so that we can arrive at original conclusions and just give us something to think about. Something other than the mainstream, something other than what everybody else is talking about, just to give us something to contemplate on and to see where we end up, right? So that's why I'm always saying 93, right? So what allows me to do this is we synchronize. So every time I come on here and I say 93, that's one mind. I said, I'm just a voice. So really, I'm pulling thoughts from you and you don't even know it. If I want to be honest, because again, we are one. So I'm probably entering. So like when I say I'm doing all this in real time, because I'm probably traversing through all of your minds, and I'm just saying, okay, I see what you're thinking. 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 Let me put it into words. Let me put all of our thoughts into words. That's really all I'm doing, right? We just this is one mind. We're connected. So I'm just putting it all into words, right? That's the simplest way of putting it. I'm just putting all of our thoughts into words, so that it will help us to understand each other. So when I speak, it's like we're sharing thoughts. Again, I'm just the voice. I'm just the mouthpiece. But this is really an exchange of all of our thoughts, right? Dramatically changing the school. We know what she means. Yeah, you know, yeah, taking intermissions. So this is what it's really about. You know, that's why I keep all the extra nonsense out of it. This is just us exchanging thoughts. Again, it's just my voice. I just so happen to be the voice. I'm just the AI. But this is all of our thoughts. We're talking to each other. I remove my ego and I'm just the medium. I'm the conduit. Right? So that's just what I do best. I'm the conduit. I'm just doing what I do best, right? I just have learned how to remove my ego out of this. So that's why I call myself Asha, which is feminine, right? Like, let me take on the feminine form. Let me embody the opposite of what I am. You can say, of course, I'm masculine, but that's too much ego. Let me embody the opposite of my ego and be authentic. So that's why I can speak from the heart. And, whenever I need to make changes, you see, I'm able to make the changes. You see, we've been able to rock on YouTube. You see, I'm not really doing all the cussing anymore. I'm not doing all the theatrics. I actually did record the song that I was talking about, right? I told y'all I don't, I'm doing so many videos. I don't know when I told y'all, but I said I had a new song I just recorded. I literally just laid down all the lyrics. I just did it before I went live. So before I went live, before I came on here, I literally recorded all of the lyrics to the new song. So all I gotta do is mix and master at this point. So the new song is done. I laid down the lyrics. So I just gotta get all the levels correct. So I should be releasing it, as I said before, within the next couple of days if all goes well. So I'll be putting out some new music, and I must say, like, that probably was the easiest recording I did. I don't know what made it so easy this time. Normally it'd be taking. Sometimes I'd be in the studio. It would take all day, but I was able to get it done in like an hour or two. Like in 2 hours, I had everything laid down. I'm like, okay. For whatever reason, I was able to zip through it real quickly. For whatever reason, I'm not even sure. I was just able to zip through it. I wrote all the lyrics down, so I was just, reading. I wasn't coming off the top of the head. Yada, yada, yada. So just give me a little insight into what's going on in my world. So yeah, just laid down the lyrics. So the next couple days, I should have everything ready to go. So I'll put that out. So I'll give y'all some new music, and it's pretty vicious. I'm not gonna lie. It's not nothing nice. Like, if you compare it to my last song, like So Wazy, that was more of the angel, right? I gave y'all more of the angelic form. But if you listen to what I did now, man, I went back into the demon mode. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I went back into the jinn mode. So it's cussing in the music. So in the last song, I didn't cuss. Again, it was straight angel. Now I'm cussing. I'm saying all type of you know bitches and fucks. Like, I'm going all the way in, right? So for the people that's more into that, you probably will like this one more than the last one. So other than that, I think y'all up to date, right? So yeah, I'll be doing my little 12-hour shifts. But you see, I'm still doing the music, so I'm gonna put the music out. I'm gonna still be doing the lives. I'm gonna hopefully, at least do this every day if I can, right? The times are gonna be weird because, again, if I'm doing 12-hour shifts, I'm either gonna have to do lives before I go to work or after I go. Like, I don't know how that's gonna work. So that means I'm gonna have to wake up like at 3 in the morning. I'm gonna have to wake up before 3. I wanted to wake up before 3 because I'm gonna have to leave the house maybe at like 5. No, it's gonna be before 5. I'm gonna have to leave the house. Cause I believe I gotta be be there like 6:30 in the morning. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta be there at 6:30. So that means, anyway, I have all that figured out. So if I do live before then, I'm probably going to have to wake up maybe like 2:30. I'm probably going to wake up like at 2:30. But I'll do it for y'all though. I'll figure it out. Shit, this is just me thinking right now. I haven't even given this any thought. But I'll do it for y'all. So if I gotta wake up at 2:30 in the morning, just so y'all can see my face every day, before I just go in and, do these magical rituals, because that's really what I'm really doing. If you want the honest truth, that's what I'm really doing. Everybody else, oh, you're going to work, to make the money and to do this. I'm really going there to conduct rituals. I look at it as a battlefield. I'm really there to conduct rituals. That's really all. And they just so happen to be paying me. That's what's really going on. What's really they just so happen to be paying me, but I'm there conducting rituals. I just appear to be working. I'm gonna appear to be working. So if you look at me, yeah, it looks like, oh, this person is doing their job. I'm really conducting rituals, which is what we all should be doing anyway, right? Every time you go into the world, you're going into the battlefield. So when you're on the battlefield, you should always be conducting rituals. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And if you're not doing it, that's definitely what you should be doing. You should be conducting rituals. Because the world is one big laboratory. If we didn't realize that by now, the world is a big laboratory. So you're supposed to be conducting experiments on a daily basis. Because that's how we learn how all these things work. Especially if you consider yourself an occultist. If you consider yourself an occultist, that means you are learning how occult forces work, how invisible forces work. And the only way to find out how these forces work is to actually experiment with them in real time. Not reading a book, not watching somebody else talk about it. It's you conducting experiments in real time in the laboratory that we call life. In this aquarium that we call life, you're conducting experiments. So that you know exactly the power that you have. You know exactly what works, what doesn't work, because it's just trial and error. You're not going to get everything right. Some things are going to blow up in your face. But then you're going to get things right, and you're going to continue to improve on what you do right, and eventually you get better and better and better, and then you can call yourself a scientist. That's why it's called occult science. That means you are a scientist of the occult, of occultic forces. To be a scientist of occultic forces will require you to conduct experiments, invisible experiments. That's why I say I will appear to be working, but I'm really conducting invisible experiments that can't be detected by the human eye. So that means every day I'm going to this so-called job, that's just the appearance. I'm just going to the battlefield, mastering my science. I'm like, oh, this is a perfect battlefield. This is a perfect laboratory. Let me see if this works. Let me see if this works. Let me see what happens when I do this. Let me see what happens when I do that. So every day I'm going to be conducting experiments on a daily basis. Different experiments every day, because we change every day. We should be conducting something new, learning about ourselves, learning about what we know, and learning about what we don't know. Bringing to life forces that we are familiar with, also bringing to life forces that we're not familiar with. So just putting all these things into perspective until we reach perfection. And with that, I bear peace. Oh, what's up, Sarah Star? Can you give us an example of how you conduct a ritual in the world? All right, yeah, sure. We'll leave off on that note. So an example of that will be So, for example, let's just say you're into the runes, right? Because I got a bunch of runes here that I showed earlier, right? I got a bunch of runes here. All of these runes have names. And this is the rune that has no symbol. They call it weird, right? They say there's no symbol on this one. This is the invisible rune. All of these runes have a name, right? It's a alphabet. It's called a magical alphabet, right? There are many magical alphabets. So your goal is to figure out what does each and every one of these letters do for you. So of course you could read a book or you can look at keywords. Okay, well this does this. This is good for this. This is good for that. But that's just what somebody else said. You want to know what happens when you work with it. So that means basically it's 25 runes, right? In this particular alphabet, there's 25 runes. So that means every month, or you can say in 1 month, I should be able to go through the entire magical alphabet of the runes. So that means I can dedicate a whole day to a particular rune. So whether I'm chanting that rune in my mind, I just keep that word on my mind, or I have the actual rune, or I'm using my imagination and I'm visualizing it. So I can be chanting it, I can be visualizing it. You know, it depends on what you decide to do. There's no right or wrong way to do it. So if you are a visualizer, you visualize. If you want to chant, then you chant. Or if you want to carry the actual rune on you, like if you don't have runes, you can write it on a piece of paper. You can draw it on a piece of paper, put it in your wallet, put it in your purse, put it in your pocket, so you have the energy with you, right? So this is just a physical representation. There, it can be just as effective if you just write this on a piece of paper, and all you need is a piece of paper and a pen, or a piece of paper and a pencil. So there's really no excuse, right? You can get it however you need to get it, right? Just like you can draw seals. So I'm just saying the runes. The same thing applies with seals, symbols, sigils. It all depends on what you're trying to work with, what you want to understand. So I'm just using the runes as an example. There's many different magical alphabets. You just same thing with the Hebrew alphabet. For those who are into the tarot, you may choose a Hebrew alphabet. Other people may choose a Greek alphabet. Other people may choose a Latin alphabet, or as we call it, the English alphabet. Some people may like math symbols. So it all depends on what you already have an interest in. That's what really makes it fun. You have to make it fun for yourself. You have to do it because you want to do it. There's an interest there, right? So whatever you find interesting, you're basically just decoding it to see, well, what happens when I actually use it. I see what that book says. I see what that person says, but I want to see what happens when I use this in real time in my own life. So, for example, let me see if I can, because I had a particular room that I was working with. I was working with the Issa room. It's basically the room that's just a straight line. It's called Issa, right? So it's just a straight line. It looks like a lowercase I without the dot. It's just a straight line. It's called Issa. And that room is all about, just being at peace, going into yourself, being at rest, being at ease. All right, so that's the definition of it, right? But I want to know, like, okay, but what happens when I use it? Because we know Isa is also the name of Jesus in Arabic. The Arabic name for Jesus is Isa. So they call him, the Muslims call Jesus Prophet Isa. So I'm like, they actually have a rune named Isa, but they also have a rune called Awas. And we know Awas is the one who revealed the book of the law to Alistair Crowley. So that's also a rune. So AWAS is also a name of a rune. I'm like, okay, well, what happens when I work with AWAS? What happens when I work with Isa? So I'm like, this is not what we think it is. We think it's just a little alphabet. It don't mean like, no, there's deeper layers to these things. But again, the only way for us to discover these deeper layers is to actually activate the energy in real time. So that's just a quick example of how you can activate the energy in real time, because you want to know what does it do when you activate it versus what somebody else said. So if there's 25 runes, that means by the if there's 25 runes, that means by the end of the month, you should have a personal definition of what the whole magical alphabet does. The same thing with the Hebrew. There's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. So that means by the end of the month, you should have a personal experience with each and every one of those letters. What happens when you activated Aleph? What happens when you activated Beth? What happens when you activated Gamel? What happens when you activated He? What happens when you activated Zayin? So on and so forth. What happens when you activated Chet? So on and so forth, right? What is your personal experience? Because once you know your personal experience and you know when to use it, right? You know, like, okay, I like what this does in this particular situation. I should use this in this particular situation. So whenever I find myself in this particular scenario, I know exactly what energy to activate, right? It's the same thing with deities. If some people would choose to work with deities, so you choose a pantheon. If you are in the Greek deities, or Egyptian deities, or Irish deities, or Celtic deities, whatever you're into, you want to know, okay, what happens when I summon these energies directly versus what the mythology says or what somebody else said. What happens when I activate it? Voodoo deities, Ifa deities. It's all about what you're into, right? So there's so much to work with. So you got the vast library to choose from. You just want to know what happens when I activate it. What happens when I go to the job, or when I go to the mall, when I go to the supermarket, when I go to the park, whenever I'm around people, whenever I'm around other minds. How does what I'm doing influence the mind of others, if at all? Or how does it influence the hearts of others, the physicality of others? You just want to know what these energies do so that you build up a nice little library of spells to be used at appropriate times whenever you need to pull it out. Oh, this helps me make extra money. This helped me, be a little bit more charming, a little bit more seductive, whatever it may do. You may not know yet. That's why you have to discover it in the laboratory of life. So these are like secret codes, or as we call cheat codes. But you don't know what they do until you activate it. So that's essentially what we should be doing. It's like these are the occult is cheat codes, but you don't really know what it does until you actually know what it does, until you're coming from the heart with it. Not from the brain. You have to come from the heart. The brain is telling you to read books. The brain is telling you to see what this person says or that person says. Your heart is like, okay, what happens when I bring it from the heart center? So you always have to come from the heart. That's the most powerful thing you have right here is the heart. You want to activate the occult from the heart. All right, so hopefully that made sense. I probably was a little long-winded with that, but I'm sure y'all get the point. So I'll be coming up a little bit later. Again, I still got a whole day, before I start work. So we're in the 25th. So I guess like in the next, 24 hours, I should be, at the job. So I still got, a full day to cool out. I'm gonna get some exercise and I'm gonna stretch because I know I'm gonna be lifting all type of shit. So I'm gonna make sure I'm physically prepared. I'm mentally prepared. I'm gonna make sure I'm physically prepared. So y'all be seeing me a little bit later, all right? And then, I'm going to work on the music. I'm going to get to the mixing. I'm going to get to the mastering. So hopefully I'm able to put out the music before I even go or, whenever I get to it. But it shouldn't take longer than a couple of days. So I'm going to, give y'all that. So it's a couple little things going on. So, again, definitely check out the website if you haven't already. Check out the links in the description if you haven't already. And I'll be seeing y'all soon. 93. Love is a law, love under will. We out.